MusicalTalk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to MusicalTalk. I'm Thos and I've just spent 8 days with my old friend Fred Inge, who in the land of the Spoonerisms is often mistaken for the world's largest arts festival. Well, underneath all the traditional opening nonsense from me, it is, of course, the time of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe 2013, and it's continuing right up until Bank Holiday Monday, which means at the time that this episode goes out, you can still see shows up in Edinburgh. So if you're going anywhere in that vicinity, there are some shows you might really seriously want to be considering seeing. I've just spent, as I said, 8 wonderful days up in Edinburgh. It's a beautiful and splendid city in its own right, but it's even more exciting during the time of the Edinburgh Fringe. It's a huge bubble of excitement, interconnectivity and creativity and wonderful shows, and frankly there's something to suit everybody. But if you're listening to Musical Talk, I've got a guess you're probably quite interested in musicals. Controversial. Well, as is my wont, I have spent quite a lot of time recording interviews with people about many of the shows which I truly enjoyed, some of which have already closed, some of which are open towards the end or to the very end of the festival. And today you're going to hear brief extracts from interviews relating to 14 shows which you can still see right up to the end of the festival. And I'll be giving you the venue and the date of the last show after each extract. So today's episode is a smorgasbord of extracts of conversations I've had with so many of the people involved in all these wonderful musicals in Edinburgh. But in order to make it interesting, I've tried to pull out different parts of the conversation, dealing with lots of different aspects of being in or writing for or supporting musical theatre at the Edinburgh Fringe this year. As there's no right or wrong way of ordering these, I have gone for the very simple approach of going in alphabetical order. So when I tell you our first show today is going to be title of show, you're going to say, but that begins with T. Well, actually, no. It begins with an open bracket, because the name of the show is actually open bracket, title of show, close bracket. And therefore, in my book, that goes before A. The next show after that will be a number, and then we'll be going alphabetically after that. I'm just saying this now in case there are people out there who really want to write to me and say, oh no, numbers and other form of punctuation go afterwards. I don't care. So, as I said, let's start the ball rolling. Here's an extract of an interview I conducted with Alex Howarth, who's the director of Title of Show, currently showing in Edinburgh. And in this section of the interview, you'll be able to hear the full version of it in the next few weeks. But in this section, we discussed the relationships and the role of women in this wonderful 5-star show, Title of Show. Musical Talk.
It's a really interesting relationship dynamic between the characters as well, because it's not, there's no traditional love story or which you have in almost every musical that I can think of.
It's so refreshing for that purpose.
Yeah. And there's absolutely none of that. It is about them and their story and what they did.
Although there is a sense of an unrequited love. Love story is too strong a word, isn't it? But there's a sense that one character might be interested for it to go further than another.
Yes,
which is very true to life in a lot of cases.
It's interesting there's extensive notes in the script on that bit and how it should absolutely not be played by he's desperately in love with him, but it's just the attempted kiss is just a reaction to a moment when you're very much in that and
it's the bubble,
very
isn't it?
overcome. Yeah.
And Lord knows how many people can say they have avoided that circumstance.
Well, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's really different and interesting from that point of view as well. It is in many ways it is a traditional musical because it follows 4 people triumphing against adversity, but also they're very, very different characters and a very, very different setup, and so I think it's really refreshing from that point of view as well.
The person I was with was also delighted by it because he thought that the female characters, who are the friends of the 2 writers in this, and they get a lot of laugh lines quite often from the device of, are we allowed to speak yet because we haven't said anything?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
they are both real characters and also written characters. And it's true, it's not about them it's not about the female characters per se, but they are very strongly written.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're both very, very strong women. I mean, I've watched endless hours of Side by Side with Susan Blackwell, which is Susan's YouTube channel where she interviews Broadway stars, but she always has them doing something fun and interesting. Like she has Daniel Radcliffe cleaning her windows.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
She takes Celia Keenan Bolger to the zoo, and they're very, very entertaining. And that is what you see in the show is exactly how she's very, very funny, very sassy, and they're really, really and and that's the joy about this is that it is exactly what it says it is. They wrote down what happened to them and they made that into the musical. So it was very real, and we've worked very hard to make sure we try. Well, I feel like we've achieved that naturalism of the moment, and it not feeling like
nothing
they're
feels like
acting.
A full step. Nothing feels like a full step. I mean, it's beautifully directed.
Thank you.
You may have that one.
Thank you
but
very
genuinely,
much.
it is beautifully directed. It works like clockwork because it's 4 people. It really is. It's an intricate little Fabergé egg, and every time it reveals itself almost. But there's so much more to it, and it just kicks along very nicely. It is sustained all the way through. Well, that was Alex Howarth. And if you want to see title of show, or more accurately brackets, title of show brackets, you can do so. It's at Assembly Checkpoint until the 26th of August. That's the bank holiday. Well, the second in our list today is a new American musical, and it's a concept musical in its truest sense. There's no overwhelming narrative. In fact, there's barely a narrative at all. The show's called 35mm, a photographic exhibition. 35mm is how it's advertised, mm being millimetres in this case, and relates to, well, the good old days when cameras took photographs onto films. I spoke to the director and the musical director of this splendid but very unusual musical and asked them to explain precisely what the show was and the role of the musical director.
I am Kate Peskin and I am the director of the show.
I'm Michael Riley and I'm the musical director.
And this is 35mm. It's a concept show. How would you describe it? Because it's not your standard Broadway musical, is it?
It's not. In its title, it's described as a musical exhibition, which I think sums it up quite well once you've seen it, because it kind of combines the idea of it being a photography exhibition and a musical. There isn't a through line as such, obviously, that it's not got a running narrative. It's more of a series of snapshot stories, and so that's where it differs. Really, it's kind of along the lines of a song cycle, to be honest, but with that added dimension of the kind of running theme of photography.
It has some classical precedents, does it not? There's pictures in an exhibition, which of course is a similar kind of thing classically, and I was getting some very strong hints in British history in the 1930s when Edith Sitwell, you may know famously, semi-rapped, I think is the only way of describing it, to music by Walton through a megaphone. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was very similar kind of sort of totally different, bizarre things. And I was getting some of that sense because some of the not a direct lift, you understand, but there was, it's been done before at one level. But this is a popular American show, isn't it? It's been massively successful in the States, I guess.
Yeah, it was a massive hit off Broadway. The run sold out. They extended it. I think it's a concept that the American theatre world is quite used to, not having a narrative, the idea of a song cycle, and I think that we're less familiar with it over here, which makes it quite challenging to present to a British audience, I think. But it's been a massive hit over there and have had really big names involved with it. And Ryan Scott Oliver, who's the composer, has quite a big name out there as well now. So I think all those things combined, whereas over here it's much new. It feels much newer because we don't really know about song cycles as much outside of the industry.
So it feels like a concept musical as a result. I think you're absolutely right. Your cast are fantastic.
Thank you. I'll tell them you think so.
I do think so. But there's one person, well, there's in fact 2 people, aren't there, who work all the way through. And that's you. You've only got one song, I think, off, which is the
and it lasts about 2 minutes, and it's a lovely break.
Yes.
But
you rest your fingers in hot water, presumably.
Yeah, I have a nice little bowl beside me. Yeah.
So how do you find the score? Because, I mean, to my ear, it sounds extremely contemporary. It's actually quite hypnotic at some level. It's quite soothing, particularly in a dark auditorium, and there's no through line, so you can just take things as they come as an audience. How is it for you, and how's your concentration?
I mean, for starters, it's a very challenging score to play for both myself and Rich, the drummer.
Yeah. And you are the complete orchestra between you, are you not? Yes.
Yeah, yes. It's originally it was done by a band of, I believe it was 6, and I sort of took it upon myself to try and create as many sounds used in the original off-Broadway production on my keyboard, which is always a difficult thing. But it is a challenging thing to overcome. But I think that it's a great score to play. Really interesting, always challenging, and very. You have to concentrate throughout the whole show.
Well, I can see it on your face. You're also making eye contact with various of the actors, and indeed your drummer, I notice occasionally,
right.
And up to the box where you are, Katie, direction. So you're tucked in this dark little corner.
Right.
I mean, how easy is that?
It's hard to hear a lot of the cast at a lot of the time because I'm sat nearer the amp than I am the cast, and I'm always trying to observe every aspect of the show just to make sure nothing can possibly go wrong. So I'm looking for Katie in case she's sitting at the back thinking, what are you doing, Michael?
Where did the song go? The song's gone. Well, that was Katie Peskin and Michael Riley, and they were talking about 35mm, which you can still see at the Bedlam Theatre until the 24th of August. And I gave that 4 stars. It's an intriguing and beguiling piece. Well, now, Alphabet fans, we get to a show whose first letter is A, although I have cheated a bit because the title of this show is A Body to Diet For. And that's actually DIE brackets T close brackets. So they've built in their own pun in the title. And this was a full-blooded musical comedy show that had some serious things to say about the modern world and the cultural pressures, particularly on women, to conform to a particular look, body image if you like. I spoke to Ben Holder, the musical director, and to Chelsea Caulfield, one of the actors, about the show, and in this extract we discussed when they joined the process, which was at different times in each case, and the relationship with the writers.
Well, I'm actually very new to the project. I auditioned for it in June, yeah.
It was recent, isn't it?
Yeah. I auditioned for the part in June and was lucky enough to get the part. And we started rehearsals in July, which we rehearsed throughout, and then we came straight up to Edinburgh in August.
Because you are a professional acting and, you're a professional group, so...
Yes, we are. We're
standard, isn't it, for a professional group, 2 or 3 weeks?
It's
quite quick.
Yeah, we're 10 individuals who, most of us didn't know each other before we had involvement in this production, and we all brought together and worked together on the show. So yeah, I've only been involved with it for a very short period of time, but it's I think the involvement with the show has kind of been like the piece. It's really quick paced and it's brilliant, good fun, and it's just been a great enjoyment to be involved in it. So
I've been around it slightly longer because I workshopped it with Matthew Gould. He directed it. So Matthew and I have sort of seen it seeing it through from the start. We did a workshop back in February. And we sort of did a little showcase. Well, Tim and Alan wrote it a couple of years ago, and and in its full version, it's nearly 3 hours long, and there's a lot more time to sort of develop all the story and things. As absolutely, because that's the stage that it's at. But Matthew and I sort of workshop that sort of shorter version, and I've been working with Alan, who composed it. I sort of made the vocal score and just some vocal arrangements, and sort of got all the music on its feet. But that's been a sort of longer process. So Matthew and I have been around it a long time, but I think I feel hopefully that we've developed really lovely relationships with the composers, and we're kind of hopefully going to be working with them on some of their newer material and things now. And
I've got to ask, are the composers also the book writers?
Alan wrote the music, and Tim wrote the book and the lyrics. Book and lyrics.
Right.
So,
The words.
Yeah, and the words. Yeah, exactly. All the words. He dealt with the words. And they're very funny. They're lovely chaps. They're quite different characters. They've been quite heavily involved in it, but in a really, really positive way. They got on so well with the cast, and they got on really well with Matthew and I, and it's been a real pleasure.
And I think that's really nice as a cast member as well. So often when you work on new things, you know, you sort of get handed a script and you don't know what the thought process behind it was or the reason for it being written.
It's a fait accompli by the time you get to it.
Yeah, but it's so lovely. Both Tim and Alan, you know, they've met us after rehearsal. They've come along and watched rehearsals and, you know, given us as actors, you know, pieces of information that maybe they want us to try and focus on more. But then also, you know, on the social side, you know, we've then been able to go out and have a drink with them and really like nitpick at their brains to find out why they've written these characters and what their thought process was behind the entire piece.
Because you just can't do that with Shakespeare and Coriolanus.
No, you can't.
No, not quite.
No.
No, I think plenty have tried, but I think also it's exciting for them. I hope, because you know they're both. Alan is a very sort of experienced musician, and Tim is an experienced writer, but they've never written a musical before.
Have they not?
So I think that's, you know, that will have hopefully been a really interesting thing for them.
Musical Talk. That was Chelsea Caulfield and Ben Holder, and they were talking about A Body to Diet For. And you can see that at C Venues, the main C venue in Chambers Street, right up until the 26th of August. So go along and see that. And lovely Ben Holder's been extremely busy in Edinburgh this year, because not only is he providing musical direction for A Body to Diet For, he's also supporting The Road to Qatar, an off-Broadway musical about two Jewish writers who are hired by people in the Middle East to put on a, well, perhaps rather overblown American-style Broadway musical in next to no time. It's a riotous comedy, really, and it's been doing tremendously well because it's been nominated for Best Musical Award. And it stars an old friend of this programme, Josh Boyd Rochford, who plays one of the two songwriters who are persuaded to go over to the Middle East to write their show, rather against their better judgment. Josh puts in a tremendously good turn, and all in all, it's a very light-hearted, amusing romp. And you can see that at C2, that's T-O-O, which is at St Columba's by the Castle, off Johnson Terrace. That's a very nice little venue, with a very nice open-air cafe. And The Road to Qatar runs right up until the 26th of August, so you've still got a chance to go and see it. Well, the next show in our list of extracts of interviews, and remember you'll be able to hear the full interviews in each case over the next few weeks in Edinburgh as we do our much more in-depth review of some of the best shows that were available, is about the new musical, A Theory of Justice, the musical. This was a comedy, but once again it was telling a story, in this case, about political philosophy. Yes, about political philosophy. Now, you might think with a title like that, it might be a little bit dry, but far from it. This was a show that had been devised and written by some incredibly talented young people at Oxford University, and I spoke to two of them, Tom Pito and Ramin Sabi, who are part of the writing team for this new musical, and we discussed, in this extract, well, the story, to give you some idea of what it's about, and how it came to be.
John Rawls, a young professor at Harvard
in the 70s.
In 1971, is trying to reinvigorate the field of political philosophy, looking for the next big idea in this supposedly dead field. And he sees a student he calls Fairness, who inspires him to write A Theory of Justice. But physicists in the next squad accidentally open a time vortex which Fairness falls into. He goes in to save her, and so this starts an epic journey where he meets a whole range of political philosophers, from Plato and Socrates, who is a ventriloquist doll, a rap battle between Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, Rousseau, who gives a rock number, and all this he's pursued by the evil libertarian villains, Robert Nozick and Ayn Rand, who do a tango. We also have a utilitarian barbershop quartet.
And a cameo with a crazy Karl Marx, who's a homeless man, really.
Yes. And then to top it off is Immanuel Kant as a fairy godmother.
Stroke drank.
Yeah.
With just a little bit too much relish, I
Yeah.
thought, provided by your actor.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's basically a gallop through time, isn't it? Yeah. To meet some of the big names in philosophy, political philosophy in particular, and a few are throwaways, I noticed. I noticed that Thomas Aquinas and Montesquieu get sort of name-checked but don't bother to turn up. And it's very funny, let's be honest. You could describe it in lots of different levels. It's a romantic comedy, if you know the relationship between John Rawls and Fairness. It's also got an edge there because Fairness is one of the people in his class, so
Yes.
there's a bit of an edge going on. Of course, it's a chase if you're looking at that point of view, but of course, most of all, it's a comedy, whilst at the same time being true to the philosophical beliefs of the people on the way who are met. So, someone's going to say, and it's going to be me, why, how, how did this come to be? The inception of this. Which one of you is the philosopher with the dream?
Well, it started with Ramin. He just said it as a joke one day. I don't quite know why.
This is something we study. It's like the cortex. We're both from Oxford University. We study. And
what are we both reading, by the way?
So we both read politics, philosophy, and economics.
Oh, so it is within your sphere.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
it's not like you're doing something really bizarre.
No,
and just had to stumble across it today.
So one thing we set to study was a theory of justice, which is this massive, very boring book. And wouldn't it be fun? Theory of Justice, the musical, lol.
And then the rest of us laughed, and then Elon Alzan-Levy, who's the one of the other writers, said, "That's a great idea. We have to do it." And then me and Ramin just turned to him and said, "No, Elon. It was a joke. We're not really doing this." But then about a year of nagging later,
we eventually started writing.
But sometimes ideas are so engaging from the very first that they do. They even when they've been immediately shouted down, they lurk in the back of the mind and then come to full fruition. So when was this then? Come on, when did you actually finally decide to engage with it as a project?
So I actually have a precise record of it, which is the 5th of August 2012.
Oh, right.
When
Could you be more specific?
actually, I
just after lunchtime.
It was 12:32 because so this is when I had a recording because I kind of co-wrote a lot of the music. So this is when I first got the main theme tune and realised, oh wait, this could actually work. I actually can see how this would function as a proper musical.
So you actually thought the structure was
It was when I always kind of. When we were pushing the joke a year before that, I did think, let's do it. It's like time travel. Let's go through all the political philosophers. This is how it would. So actually, the Nozick as the villain was kind of the first thing.
One of the first things that happened. The Utilitarian Barbershop Quartet was a very early idea as well.
I mean, we'll talk about some of the conceits that you use to illustrate, but there's a lot to like in this.
But then yes, it was only when I sat down and actually properly tried to get some music on paper that I realised, oh wait, this is how that's how the first scene would work. If you make the first scene work, that's the trigger for the whole thing.
You've set your framework up.
And so then it was like a month later we started actually writing it, getting things on paper.
Well, there we have it, a theory of justice. And if you want to go and see that, that's at C Venues, the main one in Chambers Street, until the 26th. The next two interview extracts are from two 4-star shows. That's Adam and Eve, the musical, and Armada, the musical. You'll be hearing about Adam and Eve first, as I spoke to Ben Hales, the writer and composer of the show, and we discussed the approach to setting a biblical story as a musical, because you could do it very straight, particularly if you're of an evangelical turn of mind, or you can do it as a much more comic story. In my view, the approach taken by Ben was exactly the right one, and the show came across brilliantly. It was a great show, and I gave it 4 stars. And immediately after that, you can hear an extract of a further interview I've held with an old friend of this programme, Rob Winlow, the creator of Armada. And you may remember that David Kingsmill and myself went to see Armada last year and much enjoyed it. Well, the show's been enhanced and developed and is now in a fantastic final form and is a fabulous 4-star show well worth seeing. And as Rob is now an old hand at bringing shows to Edinburgh, I thought it would be interesting to talk with him about the practicalities of bringing a show to Edinburgh, including how your performers and technical crew cope on a day-to-day basis of promoting and appearing in a show.
My name's Ben Hales, and I'm the writer and composer of Adam and Eve, the musical.
Now, I've just seen Adam and Eve, the musical, and the first thing that struck me was, how shall I put it? A show with a title like Adam and Eve, the musical, could go one of two ways. It could be a little bit preachy, a little bit pious, and a little bit straight, or it could go the other way, which is have a lot more fun. And I'm delighted for a personal basis, but I had a lot of fun. And so did the audience. Although they weren't very expressive during the show, I noticed, you got a tremendous roar of applause, and a sustained one of the longest, particularly as you have to march off immediately because you've got to strike the stage within about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You can't really enjoy it, but the audience was sort of willing you for an encore. Actually, it went on and on and on and on and on.
No, that was particularly good today, and that's what we hope for. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. When I named the show, it was sort of like, well, yes, this is one way or the other type of concept, because I'm certain there are in existence some very religious and very serious musicals on that subject, but that certainly wasn't my starting point. But I think what I really like about the idea is that it is about humanity. It's about people kind of recognising themselves in some way, and also this strange kind of reversal of viewpoint to meet some human beings who are perfectly articulate, really, or intelligent. They're just naive. Yeah. So it's new.
I like that a great deal. I tell you what, I think you've done two things. Well, I think you've done a lot of things which are remarkable, but I think you've made two very sensible decisions. From which all other decisions are built. The first is the fact that when one thinks of Adam and Eve and the story of Adam and Eve, we think of the actual moment of fall with the build-up to the apple. And this is actually the day after the apple incident,
yes.
Applegate, if you like. So it is, how do they cope in the cruel old world, having lost Eden, having lost paradise in the story. And that is actually a story which I think most people probably don't really know, because they know the bit up to the apple and the expulsion, and so that's good. So you immediately surprise people, I think, by starting with what they suspect would have been the ending, I think. Yeah. And the second thing I really like is, it must be a writer's choice, but I really like the fact that you portray Adam and Eve as teenagers. Yeah. You mentioned naive a minute ago, and that, he's angry and he's sulky and he marches off and he wants to be alone, and he's a bit gauche. And Eve is a bit insecure, and she's looking for support and yet wants to reject all these things. That's my reading of it. Tell me I'm wrong, or
no, I think that's right. But I think, although I've taken the literal story that we know, it's not. I'm not particularly of faith, but I grew up in the culture of going to church and everything, and I feel like this is a very. The story makes sense as an explanation that particularly works for small people. But what I find interesting about it is, because it ties into so many other aspects of humanity. Like I think that the adolescence thing is crucial, because really it's a metaphor. In one sense, it's a metaphor for the loss of innocence,
which is what puberty often is.
Yeah, exactly. It's about becoming adults, and I think the interesting thing about Eden is the concept of it. I came to conclude as I was writing this piece that there was no way that it could have been. My theory is that God could not have intended for everybody to stay in Eden. That Eden was very much the womb or the childhood, and I think that puts a different complexion on what it meant to fall. Because I feel like, on the one hand, there's a supernatural story at work, and on the other hand, this is a story that humans have told ourselves. And it's been co-opted, obviously, by a lot of different cultures to make specific points, about women or about innocence or about what the perfect state is and all those sorts of things. I tend to go, well, here we are not perfect, and I think in a way we've been given permission. You could read it that way. You could say, yes, we're entitled because we weren't designed to be perfect, and whichever way you feel like that we ended up here, we clearly aren't perfect. We clearly have some impulses that we have to follow, and I think it works either way.
Well, you're not following a theological doctrine, are you? You're following the story and the fable, and however one wants to define it. And you can draw as much or as little from the original text as you like. Musical talk. Without going into too much detail, forgive me, how does a theatrical group, an established group with an established show, bring itself up to Edinburgh? Because it's expensive. Yeah. Mostly, I know actors all live in the same house, and that can be good and it can be awkward. Forgive me, how are you finding your day-to-day Edinburgh experience?
Our day-to-day Edinburgh experience is very positive, I have to say. It's physically occurring.
Yes.
And
yes, people do have bags under their eyes by the end of the run.
I think all shows must feel that. I mean, you seem to be walking for miles every day and grabbing food whenever you can. And as you've already pointed out, it's not always the healthiest food. You end up scoffing.
I'm leaving Edinburgh tonight, actually, as we record this, purely to get a salad.
Yes, I have found some salads in Sainsbury's, so
they can be found.
Yeah, they can be found. That's right. Team, we're all in the same block. We're all in the same flats together.
How many of you come up?
There are 9 of us altogether, 7 cast, 2 technicians, and we all have flats on the same floor in this student accommodation. It's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, it's almost like a suite.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we've taken over two flats, each with 4 rooms in them, and self-contained kitchens.
Actually, that's a relatively luxurious Edinburgh experience.
It's quite nice.
Say, yeah. You know, sometimes people merely just put a plank over the top of the bedstead and make a bunk bed. I've noticed that.
I've heard that. Yeah. But I think, you know, in order to be able to keep yourself well and healthy, which I think is the secret for being in Edinburgh, keeping well, looking after yourself. We need good digs, really.
Yes, you do. And you also need to have a space which you can call your own. So the idea of actually having a little room within there that's your own sanctuary is such a good idea. It's funny, I've spoken to many performers and they're saying that when we were younger and we first came up here as students, we used to do our show and then go off and get drunk and feel grotty in the morning, but the shows would suffer. And they say, but now we're professionals, because a lot of them have gone into professional acting or just still doing it 5 years later, but have a few more, a bit more maturity. They say that actually we don't put ourselves through the ringer anymore. We'll go and see other shows, but we're safely tucked up in bed by 11:30 or whatever it is.
It does help. It really does help. And although 1 or 2 of the younger ones are just finding that out this time, they've realised now that you can't stay up till 4 or 5 and still put on a great show.
At one end. Absolutely. So you've got a relatively nice accommodation. So did you all come up in a van, or did you come up separately by train?
No, we come up in cars and train, and then all convened at the accommodation.
And you don't have a huge amount of props, but you've got the projections and.
Yeah, it's just the laptops and the costumes were the biggest things, and our major staging is just the chair, really. So, fortunately, so
it doubles as a throne if it needs to. Yes, it's a very versatile chair.
Much travelled, yeah.
So, forgive me then. Just simple things like parking. Have you found?
Well, there's a wonderful website, parkatmyhouse.com.
Oh, is there?
Where you can park in somebody's drive or parking space for the week. Very, very reasonable prices. The public car parks are very expensive
here. You would expect.
Yeah. So I would recommend parkatmyhouse.com to anyone coming up here. Shouldn't have said that. I'll struggle for a space next year.
Well, it's interesting because I travel by train, and so for me the travelling part is relatively simple, and I don't have to worry about parking. Nor am I here in a performing capacity, so I don't have to bring up any costumes apart from what I'm going to wear on a day-to-day basis, and I don't have props. But it amazes me, there are. The enigma of how people do it is amazing to me. That people just bundle everything into a van and they park where they can, and then they all live in this box, and then they're all on the mile all day. And do you have communal times? Do you say to yourselves, right, we're all meeting for lunch today at 1 o'clock, or do you actually give people freedom apart from when they're performing on the mile?
We generally meet at 11 o'clock every morning, and that gives people a chance to wake up, shower, breakfast, what have you.
Ease themselves into
the morning, that's right. And then we give the notes from the night before and what the plan is for the coming day. Get everybody's thoughts on, it's not just a question of me sitting down and saying, look, you didn't come on the right time and so on. It's very much a collective meeting, and it's a forum for everybody just to chip in and say what they think. So hopefully there is a great sense of teamwork.
Oh, I think that comes across on the stage, but I'm glad it's reflected elsewhere as well. Well, there you have it. That was Rob Winlow talking about Armada, a 4-star show, and also Ben Hales before that talking about Adam and Eve the musical. I must tell you, there were 2 musicals this year whose songs were so catchy that I'm still finding myself humming them as I open the fridge or I clean my teeth. I don't actually keep my teeth in the fridge, but you get the idea. And one of those was Armada. There's something about those songs which just stayed in my mind, and as they're good songs, I don't mind at all. 2 4-star shows there. And if you'd like to see either or both of those shows, you still can, because Adam and Eve the musical is on at the Gilded Balloon Teviot in Bristow Square until the 25th, And the very splendid Armada is on at the venue known as Paradise at Augustine's, which is the St Augustine's Church on the George IV Bridge, until the 24th. And now for a 5-star show. A new Canadian piece which blew my socks off. It was a taut, tense musical that could have been directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Such were its turns and twists. It's called Blood Ties, and I spoke to the co-writers, Annika Johnson and Barbara Johnston.
My name is Annika Johnson, and I am the co-writer of Blood Ties, and I'm also playing Sheila in the show.
I am Barbara Johnston, also a co-writer, and I am playing Franny in Blood Ties.
Now, Blood Ties is new writing, I think, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Now, you're both from Canada.
Yes.
And this has been performed in Canada. But when did Blood Ties first see the light of day?
Well, Barb and I went to theater school together. We studied acting, actually. And in our final year of school, we'd spent 4 years doing straight theater and living in an environment that really only valued, the classics. Drama. And we had connected early on over our shared love of musical theater. And in our final year, there was a festival held at the school for new work by students. And we agreed to join forces to write a musical and finally get to do what we really loved the most. So the first draft happened 5 years ago while we were in school and was presented in a workshop at our school.
Still called Blood Ties at that stage?
It was called Blood Buds then, which is actually a name drawn from the true story that the show is based on.
Oh, right. In fact, I didn't know that it's based on a true story.
Oh, yes.
Oh, right. Right, okay.
Yeah.
It's a story you knew about already and thought that's right for developing?
Well, it's a story that right before this festival came up in university, my mom sort of casually mentioned this experience she had with my father and two of their friends cleaning up after her uncle who shot himself in the head, which is something I'd never known about. And she sort of mentioned it, oh yeah, this one time when we were in university, your great aunt's husband, he just went to the bathroom and blew his brains out, and they took the body away, but nobody cleaned it up. So your dad came over, and we spent the afternoon with two of our friends cleaning up the mess and trying on his clothes, the deceased clothes, and we just sort of laughed through the day because we didn't know what else to do.
Real gallows humor.
Yeah, exactly. And we went out for beers after and called ourselves the Blood Buds. And I thought I couldn't believe I hadn't heard this story before. I have a very open family. I know a lot more than even I'd like to. And this is something, though, I wanted to know, and I did. And so I asked my dad. He said, oh, yeah, it was so weird. I remember the brain was gray, and it was really hard, and he got into some details. And I approached Annika, who had mentioned wanting to write a musical, and I said, look, I've got this story. I want to write a play. And I said, why don't we, we're macabre and we like Sondheim, let's make a musical out of it.
That was Annika Johnson and Barbara Johnston telling you one of the most amazing inceptions of a musical that I've ever heard. And remember, if you want to hear more about that story, and I'm sure you will from that little teaser, you can, because the full interviews from which these extracts have been culled today will be broadcast in the next few weeks, as we take an in-depth look at this year's Edinburgh Fringe. Blood Ties is a fantastic 5-star show, and in my view should be snapped up for the West End. But if you want to see it in Edinburgh, you can, because it's on until the 24th of August at the venue known as The Space at Venue 45, very close to the Market Street entrance to Waverley Railway Station. Well, from one 5-star show to another, this one is Get Got, and like Blood Ties, it was an amazing piece of drama, which was also a very effective musical. I spoke to Colin Chaston, who originally came up with the idea for the show, Stephen Faulkner, who wrote the book, Nick Massiti, who was the composer and also worked on the book, and we were joined, just as this extract starts, by Charles Arnecki, who was also involved in the creation of Get Got. And in this part of the discussion we discussed the dark heart and the sort of, if you like, the grit in the oyster in relation to this show, because it was definitely a musical with teeth.
Introducing myself.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Charles Arnecki. I'm the artist.
Do you mind if I'm actually going to put a link in?
Yeah,
for that.
do
Is
it.
that okay? And even as we speak, we've been joined by one of your colleagues, one of the other creatives.
This is Charles Arnecki. I'm the executive artistic producer and also the music director for the production at the Fringe.
You've been praised before you arrived, so you've got nothing to worry about here. You're amongst friends.
There we go.
And this far into production, if you're still friends, that's a good sign as far as I'm concerned. When, forgive me, as we were saying, it is it explores the unpleasant underbelly, shall we say, of current culture. That was always an intention. That was in the original. It's been brought out brilliantly here.
It was in the original, and then it sort of drifted away from that a little bit for the New York production. But I'm glad to say that we've come back to that.
It gives it a nice little sort of toothy edge, if I may say. There's, it's just that little bit of grit in your oyster, if you don't mind saying. I like that.
I've always been obsessed with the pieces of art that do that, like Dr. Strangelove or No Country for Old Men. I mean, just what they do there off screen is amazing. And so me and Stephen and Colin fought very hard to try to get that edge back in there, because it was important for us not to sanitize this, not to wrap it up in a little bow. The show is called Get Got. There's a prank that's called Get Got that they do.
It is catching celebrities out, isn't it? Essentially, is the one of the things in the TV program. We are the live audience, as an audience watching.
But ultimately, as the live audience, who gets really get-gotted at the end, we hope, or we want the audience, not to give too much of that away,
no.
But blah, blah, blah.
It has a very good twist at the end, which, forgive me, straight out of the Roald Dahl, not that you've taken it from him, but that kind of beautiful turn the last page and your world changes around the story that you've got. I like that a great deal. It's dramatically extremely strong. In some senses, it's a drama first with music. How would you describe its tone? How would you describe it?
I would absolutely say yes. It is a drama with music, and I described it, I think, in some blurb that I did a little while ago, as decidedly not musical theatre and deliciously different. So,
and yet, absolutely within the world of musical theatre. I mean, you're right. Its differences make it part of the mainstream. I think, in that sense, that sounds like I'm talking nonsense, but there is some sense in it. There's sense in there somewhere.
You're absolutely right.
It's within the world of within the standard of entertainment, for sure. But it is our biggest strength and our biggest downfall is the fact that it can't be categorized specifically for something like the Fringe, but it is extremely accessible to society and to different audiences of all ages.
Seems to work just as well in Britain as it does in America, and one can hope that it works in Ireland or Australia or wherever else it ends up.
Well, I think we recognise something of what's going on, even though it's set in an American TV studio.
Yes.
But that in itself, the format it's following is recognisable in, any Western culture, I suspect. Certainly any culture that's got tabloids and pop, and just to name two things.
And every culture, some cultures are more modelled after the Western, and some cultures have their own pop culture. But no matter what, they're both defined in some way within, I think, the confines of this piece. That's for sure.
It's also interesting, isn't it? Because it's a drama first, but with music. But the music is, let's talk about diegetic and non-diegetic music. Each of the bits of music are what you would expect to see if you saw that television program. So no one breaks into song because they're expressing the emotion. They break into song because they've been hired to sing a song.
Right.
I like that. But that's very unusual for a musical.
Well, it's absolutely necessary for the concept of this piece.
Yeah.
Because the realism is first and foremost with it. We can't go to.
No, there's no jazz.
There's no jazz hands.
I know.
Yeah. No jazz hands.
And I loved it anyway.
Yeah.
Some twerking, no jazz hands.
Well, there we have it. That's Get Got, a 5-star show, and an excellent one. Go and see that at the venue known as C2. That's TOO at St Columba's in the Castle, the same place where you can see The Road to Qatar. And that's on until the 26th, which is the Bank Holiday Monday, the very last day of the festival. Well, we're chugging our way through the alphabet on all these shows which you can still see in Edinburgh, but we've had two very dark shows we've just discussed, Blood Ties and Get Got. Time for something lighter. And so let's hear from James Wilson Taylor and Jessica Spray, who perform I Need a Doctor, the unauthorised whosical. And precisely what a whosical is, we're about to find out in this extract.
So I'm James Wilson Taylor.
And Jessica Spray.
We are in I Need a Doctor, the unauthorised whosical adventure at Pleasance Beside at Pleasance Courtyard for Edinburgh Fringe 2013. And it is a really fun show about two people trying to put on a big musical about Doctor Who before the BBC try and put a stop to it, so they have to change all the characters just enough so they don't get sued for copyright infringement.
So James wrote the songs and the lyrics, so the music and the lyrics, and we both co-wrote the script together, workshopped the script and everything together.
Yeah.
So we're joint, and we're both in it, actors in it as well.
Yeah.
Now, How did you get this idea in the first place? Very simple first question, really.
Well, it was you at first, wasn't it? Because we had in our final unit when we were studying at GSA in Guildford about a year and a bit ago. The final unit was coming up for something for yourself, about 10 minutes of something that you could just develop and see what happens.
Showcase piece.
Absolutely, and yeah, Jess kind of suggested, because we both like Doctor Who, if there was some way we could do something interesting with that. And yeah, it kind of came out with a rough 10 minutes of what we have now, really. Yeah, and it's just kind of kept developing it since then.
But when, unlike a Dalek, did you realise it had legs?
I'm not sure. It was when it went down really well, the 10 minutes that we did, and it was quite unusual, I think. I hadn't seen a Doctor Who musical before. Although
there are not that many.
No, but there's things like people write sort of original songs around Doctor Who and stuff, which I thought was quite fascinating.
Plenty of Trock, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep. And I thought that we could just develop it, couldn't we? So
I mean, I'm from Edinburgh as well, and I've always wanted to do something on the Fringe. So this seemed like a good opportunity to have something that is, I think it's very, very Fringe friendly, very family friendly, which is great for a kind of Pleasance audience as well, and hopefully developing onwards after August, you know.
Well, it was a good demographic in the audience when I came.
Yeah, nice mix.
I've been to several, I had to say, I'm a Doctor Who fan, as listeners will know, but I've been to several Doctor Who related shows this Fringe. There's more this year than I've seen ever, I think, actually, to be honest.
I think it's the 50th anniversary, isn't it?
It is revving
They're
it
all
up
coming out of the woodwork.
Which is where we live. But there are... the demographic in the audience is very different to what it would have been if you'd done this 10 years ago, or possibly 12 years ago. You would have generally got people like me, middle-aged men, with other men with them. You wouldn't necessarily have got children and women, forgive me, I have to say. You know, it's, as a franchise on television, it's opened up immensely.
I think it's incredible, the amount of... Because as we were saying the other day, that we've got a lot of teenage girls who just absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the Peter Capaldi announcement and how that would maybe affect the demographic because of all the people that came in with maybe David Tennant even.
Yes.
So I think it's fascinating how, as you say, the demographic has completely changed.
I think there's something, it's nice with the show as well. I think we've put in enough in for the old fans of an old generation, but we are children of New Who, very much
that
so.
That was a question I was
nice.
going to have, but there was a celery mention, so...
Well, we tried to fit in enough
the scarf,
references.
the Tom Baker scarf.
Indeed, there's enough references to go around for the 50 years, but we are very much... I mean, I came on board with Eccleston and then Tennant in a big way, and... I think that's it's interesting you say that with all the children that have been coming in and teenage girls and everything. It is nice to have something for the new generation there as well.
But there's a serious business case here. You know, we've joked that there aren't many Doctor Who musicals, and there may be good creative reasons for that, but also there has been good commercial reasons for that. Because frankly, at the end of the day, if you were only going to bring in the 40-year-olds, you probably weren't going to make any money.
Sure.
So, you know, I mean, I appreciate Fringe is a slightly different thing, and no one actually does it to make money, although it's nice if you do. But, you know, seriously, getting a full audience which genuinely reflects society is something you can now do, which possibly you didn't. I mean, were you thinking this at the time, or were you just thinking when you did your first sort of 10-minute version, this is, you know, people are really responding to this, let's just see, where we can take it?
I think it was an element of that. I mean, we did get really nice responses after that, and it was also the fact that, I mean, like I say, as children of New Who, I think we're part of that generation with the Star Kid guys in America doing Potter musical. And there's that idea that you can get up and, if you are a fan of something, kind of pay tribute to that way, and hopefully in a rather clever way. I think we've got a nice twist on it with the.
It was interesting because when we were originally sort of talking about it, we thought, could we just do a direct adaptation, so 45 minutes of, like, there's been an on-stage version of Midnight and things. And so we thought, could we do a direct, like something like The Girl in the Fireplace? But then we thought,
good luck with that.
Well, exactly,
yeah, well, indeed.
Exactly. So we,
how
but then we
horse
thought,
skills?
and then so that was how the copyright thing
came
up, because you just can't do it. When they did Midnight on stage, they had to take out the Doctor, and so it was just a man on a spaceship, and it was all a bit. It's so difficult.
If
to
you
try
embrace
and
the
actually
restrictions, that's it, isn't it? You embrace it and run with it.
That's where the comedy comes from, I think.
But this is an old trope, isn't it? In any kind of creativity, that restrictions actually make inventiveness.
Play that goes wrong, absolutely. It's great. Yeah.
Which is one of the big surefire comedy hits.
Sure it is.
Splendid. Jamie and Jess there telling us all about I Need a Doctor, the unauthorised Whosical adventure. And you can see that at the Pleasance Courtyard in the venue known as Beside, right up until the 26th of August. You don't need to be a Doctor Who fan to enjoy it, because it's fun in its own right. But if you are a Doctor Who fan, or at least have some working knowledge of the current series, you'll probably get something out of it extra. Well, Musical Talk doesn't just talk about musicals, it also talks about pantomime and cabaret. And the next show we're going to talk about is essentially a cabaret, or at least a one-man show, and in fact it's actually a tribute show. Entitled La-Di-Da, The Rise, Demise and Songs of Jake Thackeray, I spoke to John Watterson, who does a fantastic job in bringing the late Jake Thackeray's songs to life, with all the humour and cleverness that was in them. Now, Jake Thackeray was a well-known comic songwriter from the 60s and 70s in particular, and used to appear on television on That's Life. But as well as being a clever, amusing and witty man, he was also incredibly talented musically. In this extract of the conversation with John Watterson, we discuss the musicality of Jake Thackeray. Now, Jake Thackeray isn't just a wordsmith, though. He also wrote the melodies,
yes.
And he played on a guitar, as you do.
Yes.
And they appear to me, and I'm not musical, I'm more of a words man, I must say, but they look complicated. So how are the melodic structures for you?
Well, Jake was self-taught on the guitar, and he had very big hands. So when he was constructing a chord shape, if the traditional orthodox chord didn't quite fit what he wanted, he'd sort of stick a finger somewhere and make a better sound. And you could see on some of the old TV and footage, you can see other musicians looking at what he's doing and thinking, what on earth chord is he playing there? So they're complicated in as much as some of the stuff he just made up as he wanted. And then so the actual chord shapes are one thing, and then there's a combination of strumming and finger picking, which comes, I think, from the sort of Brassens and Brel influence. And it's therefore, I don't know, I've been playing them for a while now, so I don't know if they're difficult or not, because you know, if you practice something enough, you get a bit better at it.
Well, you're very fluent. I mean, you look absolutely in charge of your material from top to bottom. But from my point of view, I was looking at you, and
thank you,
because every song has a slightly, to me, it's a little precursor. There's a piece of music before the word starts.
Yes, a twiddly bit. I call it.
A twiddly bit.
A twiddly bit.
Ah, yes.
I'm self-taught as well. Can you tell?
I see you experts coming in here and blinding me with science. But I looked at those, and they sound ornate. Actually, is how they sound.
Yeah. Yes. I follow Jake as faithfully as I can on the guitar. As I say, there are some chord shapes I just can't get, and if I try too hard to be technically correct, I'm then going to lose the fact that I've got words coming up. So I do fudge it a little bit, but I get it as close as I can.
Well, you made a personal adaptation, I think, haven't you?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. But he doesn't present any trouble for you per se. But I think that's a testament to your skills.
Well, it's easier on this nylon string guitar thing. So I can't play his songs on. I've got a steel string guitar that I sort of grew up with, and I can't play his stuff on that because the strings are a lot tauter. They're harder on the fingers. So I think you can only properly do Jake on a nylon string guitar. The strings are softer there, and you can twiddle about and get more action going with them than you can on a steel guitar. So I think it's a combination of the man and the song and the instrument and that sort of thing. But they're just such a joy to do.
That was John Watterson talking about La-Di-Da, The Rise, Demise and Songs of Jake Thackeray. It was a wonderful show. I gave it 4 stars. And if you want to go and see it, you can do so. It's on at the Newtown Theatre, which is in the Freemasons Hall in the Newtown on George Street, right up until the 25th of August. Well, it's not often that we get to talk about 2 different productions of the same show within weeks here on Musical Talk. But we can today, because as well as Merrily We Roll Along knocking them in the aisles in London at the moment, it's also on in Edinburgh. And a very good production too. In fact, I might go so far as to say that I slightly preferred it over the London one. I spoke to William Gubbins, the musical director, Jessica Burridge, the co-director, and Matthew Onquist, the other co-director, about the show, and in this part of the discussion we discussed the nature of love and friendship, and which is more important, and particularly within the context of Merrily We Roll Along, and its slightly unusual emotional content.
It is, it's just the beauty of Sondheim. It's just very interesting stories, very interesting characters,
and it's moving.
It's so moving.
We saw one of our, because we rehearsed in Brixton before we came up here, and
in Brixton.
Yeah, just in London for a few days.
You're Exeter and Brixton and Edinburgh.
Well, we were trying to find a space.
Yeah, we needed a space because most
so we
people
ended up
lived
in Brixton.
London, so we ended up in a space in Brixton. Yeah.
The hottest place.
It was very warm.
Yeah, the sauna rehearsals we call them.
But we had, and some people that weren't able to make it up here, they they came to see it. And I was speaking to one of them after, and he was like, "Oh, it's so sad." And you forget from looking at it from a critical perspective and making sure everyone's coming on and off and all that, you forget that it does move you.
It
and
does.
I think that's something that now being able to watch it with a less critical eye, you do start to see that sort of coming
there's just
through.
like there's again, it's the same thing with lines. Like there's just lines which are just heartbreaking, which like I mean, there's the obvious ones where Frank says to Mary, "This is the girl I ought to marry," but then there's little ones like when Joe says, "Oh, I hope to God she doesn't leave me," and it's just
already it's going to happen.
And there's just lots of, but it's even again like watching it from once you've seen it so many times. Even just little things you just see people saying and people doing, and it's just so sad because how it's all going to go terribly wrong.
I'll tell you why I think it's so clever, and I think it's because whilst there is love and romance in it, the love and romance is incidental to the main emotion, which is friendship, which we've all had and have lost, and if we haven't yet we will, and in some senses friendship is more, I think, sustaining than romantic relationships.
Yes,
personally.
definitely.
And so it's if that turns out to be the most important emotional response that we have in our life, our friends and our close friends, and then that goes wrong, there is nothing sadder. I think it is one of the greatest tragedies, particularly musical theatre. I think it's sadder than, Sweeney Todd's a bit too grotesque, isn't it, to be truly emotional in some senses.
It's more personal though, because I think it's more relatable for an audience.
Oh, definitely.
And the style of it, it's because it does have. We've played it quite. I would say I don't like using the word naturalistic when you're talking about a musical, because obviously it's not.
But they're not doing heightened performances.
No,
they are,
exactly. They are.
They're playing the truth of the emotion.
Relatable, and I think that's another.
I think the songs as well. I mean, you mentioned Sweeney Todd. I personally am not actually a massive fan of Sweeney Todd, and it's because of the music. I find it. I don't know why. It just doesn't draw me in at all. Whereas actually, I sort of heard this. I've heard the record when he asked me to do it, and sort of listened to a few of the songs. And I actually like the songs. They're nice songs. They're well written, and I think that therefore it's sort of maybe slightly more accessible on a musical level, and therefore that will draw people into the characters because they sort of are able to listen to the songs and enjoy it, and maybe even sort of gloss over some of the actual sort of difficult stuff that's going on underneath. They're catchy songs,
and it's less bombastic.
Yeah, exactly, much so, and I think that kind of helps it draw it all together.
It does help the thread of intimacy, which you get from the small venue, that you get from the the ins and outs, the small emotions in life, as you say, the small big things hinge on small actions and decisions, and that's absolutely replicated in the score. I think what I love in this conversation is the fact that you're all speaking from the same song sheet, if that's the appropriate term under the circumstances. But forgive me, it seems to me that you have a unity of vision, which is not always the case.
I
no denials.
I don't know how that happened. It's just
I'm united. It's these two.
No, I think. Me and Jesse. I think we've always kind of definitely had the same vision for the show, and that's really helped. We've never had any issues with conflict of visions, and said Will the same. Like you've all come into it and kind of seen the same thing. Which has been really helpful.
I am acutely aware that I'm standing having just seen a show about two male friends and a female friend. I'm standing in front of two male friends and a female friend who have been working together to put on a show. Do you identify with any of the characters? Seriously, of the main three, do you? Because I don't. Right, let me lay my cards on the table. I always say this, but I see a lot of Charlie. I feel for. He has the integrity. Maybe this is self-flattering, but and I fancy myself as not a good but a writer, that kind of thing. So I see Charles as the man who feels the hurt. And he has the anger, and he represses, and all those things actually that makes him. He's not, but it make him British actually.
I think I'd say the same with you. Like Charlie for me is the kind of most relatable character to myself, I'd say. In just I'm definitely like the thing with Frank, he is so kind of charismatic and just there's something about, whereas Charlie's quite kind of nerdy and reserved, and I think that's a lot more relatable for a lot of people. I mean, there aren't as many Franks in the world as there are Charlies, I'd say.
It happens to us all.
Yeah.
Let me say, thank God there are not so many Franks. Although there are an awful lot of charismatic, weak people. And that's his character. His principal characteristic is his weakness. So none of you are now going to say you fancy being Frank.
I can see it. I can certainly see elements of it. I think there's sort of sadly, not being able to say no to things.
Playing the piano.
It's. Maybe that's why I hope for the redemption at the end, whereas you're quite happy for him to be miserable with himself.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
And
at
you?
least Mary. I think, she's definitely the loyalty I think she has, and that need to have friends close by her and keeping everyone happy. That's probably.
Oh yeah, you certainly get the impression that Frank and Charlie would have broken up, as it were, years before.
Oh,
if
yeah.
Mary had been the mortar in their wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was a discussion about Merrily We Roll Along. You can see it in London, but you can also see it in Edinburgh, and you should. Go along to the Greenside venue in the Royal Terrace in the New Town. It's off the Leith Road near the John Lewis. Absolutely lovely venue, that one. And you can see that until the 24th. I gave Merrily We Roll Along 4 stars for its Edinburgh production. Well, in the next conversation, we're going to be covering 2 different musicals, because you'll be hearing from Tom Selwood, Marina Waters and Will Guppy, who are significant players within the Quite Nice Theatre Company. And they brought, amazingly I think, 2 musical shows to Edinburgh. This Was Your Life, a spoof reality television programme where recently dead people are invited to come and be contestants in the programme, where their life story is revealed and then the audience is then invited to decide on whether they should go to heaven or hell. It is of course a comedy, and a musical one at that. And one of my all-time favourite shows for the Fringe this year, Snakes! The Musical, which is a fantastically funny musical show about putting on a musical. The conceit is that you, the audience, are a group of producers who have been invited to invest in a new, ridiculous, it must be said, blockbuster musical full of special effects and in many ways spoofing the worst excesses of the Broadway and London stage. So let's hear from Tom Selwood, Marina Waters and Will Guppy of the Quite Nice Theatre Group about their 2 shows, This Was Your Life and the 5-star winning Snakes! The Musical.
Hi, I'm Tom Selwood. I'm the Artistic Director of Quite Nice Theatre. I wrote and directed This Was Your Life, and I co-devised Snakes! The Musical.
My name's Marina Waters, and I'm an associate artist in Quite Nice Theatre. In This Was Your Life, I play Fiona and a whole host of other characters, and I co-devised Snakes.
My name's Will Guppy again. I'm an artistic associate like Marina, and with This Was Your Life, I play Michael and about 6 other characters, and in Snakes! The Musical, I play Will, or myself, and a number of other characters as well.
Now, let's start at the beginning. Quite Nice Theatre is doing something incredibly brave at the Edinburgh Fringe this year, I think, because most people only bring up 1 show. You have brought up 2 shows, and they're both musicals, and they demand versatility, and they're on one after the other. So the first question has really got to be, what were you thinking? Why? How did this come about?
It seemed like a really good idea back in January. I think it was just the fact that if we're up here doing 1 show, it seems like we may as well just do another one. Yeah. And I had the idea for Snakes for about 6 years, and so I thought, well, this will give us an excuse to actually write it now. So let's just do it. And then we thought, if we just do it one straight after the other, we don't have to then wait around and do it, we'll just go straight into it. And we kind of just thought it's just the same as doing a West End musical with an
It's a 2-act musical, isn't it?
Basically, that's how we look at it. And I'm only in the 2nd act, so that's fine.
I can see how you devise that now.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. But the first show, This Was Your Life, is something you've had as a group for a bit longer, isn't it? It's the older show of the 2, is that correct?
Yeah, we've been touring that for, a year and a half now? And that was our first show that kind of brought us together as a group.
Now, what are the aims of the group? I mean, let's talk. I mean, unusually, I think the structure and the style of the group is going to be actually the key to understanding your 2 shows, which isn't always the case for an awful lot of productions either here in Edinburgh or anywhere else. So tell me a bit more about Quite Nice Theatre.
Well, Quite Nice Theatre, we're still trying to figure that out in a way, because we do other styles of shows. We like to think that we can approach a wide range of genres in a variety of different styles and work with a lot of different people. Currently,
you can do that in 1 show.
We can. So we've had 2 very successful open-air Shakespeares in Reading as well. So we can do classical, we can do kind of modern, contemporary, multi-role, cabaret, comedy, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we're always looking for new writing and new styles and to work with new people. But we're kind of currently trying to work out what it is we are going forward. and but we've got real high hopes for where it's going to go. But yeah,
I think with the musicals especially, we one of our real aims is entertaining people. That's really important to us, because we don't really want to bog people down with a lot of heaviness. Although both of our musicals do have a serious message right underneath there, you can just come along and enjoy the shows.
Yes, there is a sixpence in the pudding, isn't there? But not everyone will want to pick it up necessarily. I'd like to explore it a little bit further, if you don't mind me saying. So when was Quite Nice created? And also, I'd just like to know how you describe yourselves as individuals, because it seems to me that, you've got comic talents in spades, you're immensely versatile, you're immensely physical, goodness me, some of the dance moves yesterday, and obviously you've got the talents of being able to write well, you've got the ability to write music, you've obviously constructed a show, two shows actually, which have really brought the audience in. They bite from the first, and they keep you by the scruff of your neck right to the very end. I wonder what kind of people you see yourselves as primarily. Actors, writers, creatives. I mean, that's a much broader term. But you tell me.
For the last 2 years, I've only just started calling myself an actor. I've always thought of myself as a performer, and mostly just a singer, to be honest. I had a little jazz quartet down in Devon called the South Street Swingers, and that's kind of where I started, and had my background is kind of shadow theatre and devised performance. But it's only recently that I've actually thought, well, acting could be a career, and that's through meeting Tom in a pantomime. That's and through that relationship, we've kind of, he's kind of built me up in a way, built me up as an actor. Yeah, he's my great mentor. Yeah, but as an individual, I would say that I'm not sure what I am. An all-rounder might be if I'm lucky to get such a title, but I'd like to think that there are many things that I've yet to do, but acting at the moment is what I'm looking for.
So in a sense, that is floated to the top of your...
That's right, yeah. Every now and again something floats up to the top, and I grab onto it for dear life. Yeah.
I'm trying to envisage as many possibilities in that picture.
I would say primarily I'm an actress. I went to Guildford School of Acting, and I did the acting course there. And then when I graduated, it just so happened that about 6 months later I met Tom, auditioned for This Was Your Life, got the role. I'd never done any musical theatre before.
Really?
No, not at all.
Same for me, actually, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the man of ball, if I may say, in both cases.
And so he cast me, and it's sort of gone from there, and now I'm a great lover of musical theatre, although I must say, before meeting Tom, my knowledge was pretty small.
We'll talk in a minute about the extensive knowledge on display, if I may say, particularly in snakes, because it's a kaleidoscope of opportunity to discuss all manner of musicals from old to new. But Tom, what about you?
I would never describe myself as a performer. I'm quite happy writing and directing and being on that side of the stage, and it was really just through various boring circumstances that I ended up performing in Snakes, and then I'm really just playing an ever so slightly heightened version of myself.
Is that true?
Yeah, it really is.
I don't hear any disagreements. And
I think, I really enjoy the writing and the directing side of things, and I love performing. I think, though, I really love performing with Will and Marina, and I think the great thing about Snakes for me is it's the product of 3 friends just messing around in my living room for 3 weeks, and that's just what we came up with. So it feels less of like a serious thing. It's just more like we're just having fun and making ourselves laugh, and if other people laugh along with us, then that's great.
Well, that was Will, Marina and Tom, and it was lovely talking to them. There'll be a much fuller interview with them about their 2 musicals in a future episode of Musical Talk over the next few weeks. But I hope that's whetted your appetite to see these 2 shows. They told me that This Was Your Life is unlikely to be revived after this year's version, so you have to catch that if you want to see it. Snakes will hopefully go on further, but it's such a good show. I gave it 5 stars, as did 2 other people on the same day. It's a remarkable piece, and go along and see them both. And here's how you can do it. They're on at the venue known as Just for Tonic at the Caves, which is off of Cowgate. And they both run until the 25th, and they're cleverly one after the other, so you can see one or both shows in a sitting should you choose to do so. I did, and it was marvellous. Well, now on to our last conversational extract, and it's from the show that I deem to be the MusicalTalk Pick of the Fringe. And it's a title you will have heard before because I had the pleasure of discussing this with its creators before the Fringe as a preview episode. And that's Take It Interns. You may recall that I previously spoke to Ronan Shields and Harry Zundel. Well, I caught up with them again, and also Ollie Feather, who's one of the co-writers, for a lovely conversation about the piece. It's been winning all manner of awards and stars, and deservedly so. It is, as I say, the MusicalTalk Pick of the Fringe. Let's hear a little bit about the secondary characters in the piece. Not the 5 interns themselves, but 2 alpha male, or would-be alpha male, middle managers who don't have enough to do, and don't have enough brain cells to do it if they did. Their names are Jenkins and Hamilton, and in this conversation we'll be talking about how the secondary comic couple, if you like, can also touch upon real emotion. There's 2 characters we've not spoken about yet, who are the sort of the idiot middle management. You know, you've got Jenkins and the other character.
Jenkins and Hamilton.
Perkins, as a reviewer from Broadway Baby, called him. It's always nice to know they're on the ball over at Broadway Baby. Well, they gave us 3 stars, so we can say what we like.
I prefer Perkins. That's a brilliant name.
We did actually, after reading that, we considered changing him to Perkins.
By popular demand. But those 2 characters, I'll tell you why I think they're fabulously interesting. Because, I'm sure deliberately, because you're a man of distinction and intelligence. But I am, in real life, a middle manager of no particular importance, in an office not entirely unlike the one we've been describing, writing our story about. And over the years, you know, the traditional career path is you start not being a manager, and then you get to about as high as you can get just doing the profession in which you find yourself, and then you have to go into management if you want to go any further or earn more money. Yeah. And if you've got a mortgage, hooray! But that's the point when when you're a manager, you're not in charge. You're actually the bottom of the next rung up, which is the managers above you. Yeah. And you're given all the grotty jobs as managers to do. And some of those actually affect people's lives. You know, up to that point, you've been, you know, your staff's lives. And Jenkins in particular, or Perkins as we now think of him, actually overtly says something that I have been through in my own management career, which is actually this is stopping me being the kind of person I want to be. You know, I believe myself to have integrity as a person, and I believe in treating people well if I can manage it, and I'm being instructed to do things which are not good, or even not. Even if you've got to do something bad, there's a better way of doing it than the way I'm being instructed. So, you know, when do you actually give up being a manager? You know, where's the balance, the threshold? I'm making a big meal of this, but I was so delighted to hear actually stated out loud something that I have grappled with in a real life situation. And of course, there's more going on in this case. But so, you know, forgive me, did you just stumble across that? Is it, you know, human?
It's not even just that he's doing. He's acting differently because he's explicitly told to, but just because that's the expectation in the office environment, and he just struggles to live up to that. But he does his best.
They feel the need to be alpha males.
Yeah, exactly.
He's never quite there, is he?
No, he never quite gets there.
Although even the alpha maleism from the other character's name, Hamilton.
Yeah.
He's identified as being a proper alpha male, except he's very much a beta alpha male.
Yeah.
He wouldn't cut it with the big boys.
But in this environment,
it's a sort of role reversal. When Cicero walks on stage, Hamilton sort of shrinks into himself and becomes a bit sycophantic. And
how's your weekend, sir?
Yeah, exactly. Having been so alpha male up until that point, but. They also, as well as doing that interesting thing that they you know are within the office, they serve as they act as the antithesis slightly to Fiona, who's not happy and who can't enjoy work. They do enjoy themselves in the office, and they have a relationship between the 2 of them, and even with Fiona, a sort of a very specific type of banter or a camaraderie and a friendship. And it's very clear that they're probably not friends outside the office, but they're very good friends within the office. And that's something that I particularly wanted to come across, because it's something that is definitely true of being in an office, is that you have very close friends, but they're sort of just office friends. And they're really interesting and slightly strange relationships, but they're really important relationships. And that they represent those 2 characters. And it's probably why they're so likeable, because they're the good thing about being in an office and being in middle management or whatever, or being that person. There's a lot of fun to be had. and so that's why I like them so much.
I also think that they serve a purpose in helping to sympathise and empathise with Fiona, because they are traditionally, macho men, slightly bigoted and not particularly intelligent. One say maybe.
I think that's fair.
That you feel for her because she has to put up with this crap, even though you can tell that she is an intelligent person. She's not, she's not like them at all. And I think that serves.
She cares.
She does
She's
care.
still got the candle burning of care.
Yeah.
And they don't.
No, they don't. No. And so I think that's a nice touch that they add. That's maybe not so evident on the surface, but I think that they do serve a purpose there in that respect.
And of course they do have their own sort of their story reaches an end in a very profound and physical way, you would say.
Yeah.
Now, the night we went to see it, that was a full-on experience, if I may say.
Well, actually,
I wanted to get some popcorn.
We might as well explain what it is if we're going to talk about it. But basically, it culminates in these two characters having a big kind of almost quite graphic embrace.
15 years of suppressed homosexual love comes out in about 30 seconds.
And that can be messy, if I may say.
Well, you say messy.
Speaking from experience.
I mean, it literally has been messy. There's been 4 nosebleeds.
And not even just from the same person, they've alternated.
Turn at nights, bang, flashing in the face.
So Kleenex is involved, but not in the way you'd expect.
No, he walks. He walks on during the curtain call, often with a bit of Kleenex in his nose.
Yes, well, you've got to give all when you're an actor.
Yeah.
They really go for it. They really go for it.
Honestly, full credit to them.
No, Joe O'Toole is enjoying it far too much. Tom Manson, who plays Jenkins, has been saying that Joe O'Toole, he's going in with an open mouth.
They've been practicing quite a lot actually back at Crap Flat. Oh no, we're rehearsing.
Besides, there's nothing on television.
Crap Flat doesn't have a television.
Oh, well,
nice
flat does though.
But forgive me. I'll tell you what, that was great because things moved on so much. But actually, when that happened, the audience went hurrah!
Yeah,
absolutely.
It gets a wonderful reaction.
I mean, it gets
unexpected.
the biggest reaction of the whole show, and then the band are playing sort of reprise of Men in the Workplace in a romantic style in the background. Almost, the audience is so loud though that it's almost inaudible.
I must tell you, I don't think I'd pick that up.
No,
it's a really great. I really like the idea of that kind of working.
There's a violin playing Men in the Workplace, which is a really boisterous song originally in a very romantic style. At that point, I think we'll probably have to get that.
Just crank it up.
Crank that up because it's very funny.
I think the two lines that they then say after this huge embrace that they share, they kind of pull their shirts down and straighten up a bit, and then they say and Jenkins says, "Back to work. How's your work?" and they just walk off stage, and that's them done. I think it's a lovely little couple of lines there from that.
It's great because also it gives you that moment of raucous comedy.
Yeah, and also it kind of
you've got some tenderness going on as well, haven't you? And real stories as it goes.
But then you also kind of understand. You're like, okay, so this is what's really been going on there behind the mask.
It sort of makes, and it's good as well that Hamilton, the more boisterous of the two, leads the kiss. So you actually, it kind of flips it further than you'd expect. That actually they've both known sort of all along, and and it doesn't feel forced, which is really good, and there's some chemistry between them that's kind of been leading there. And I think if it didn't happen, no one would have expected it, but when it does happen, people can look back and go, actually, that was kind of obvious, which is brilliant because actually it's not obvious. I don't know if that makes sense. That actually makes no sense, but it's really good that it doesn't seem gratuitous or thrown in, because it never was. It was always planned that they were deeply in love. They just didn't know it yet.
Musical Talk. That was Ronan Shields, Harry Zundel and Ollie Feather, and they were lovely people and well deserving of the success that they're getting. Remember, that's a 5-star show and Musical Talk's pick of the Fringe, so please, if you see no other show, go along and see that. It's at C Venues, that's the main C venue, in Chambers Street, and you can see it right up until the 26th of August. That brings us to very nearly the end of this episode, but the thing I must say is that we try where possible not to be unnecessarily negative. And if I didn't enjoy a show, then there was no point in me catching up with the people afterwards. So all the conversations you've heard so far relate to shows which I enjoyed in some way. Some more than others, but they were all good shows and they were all deserving of people's attention. If any of those tickle your fancy and you're anywhere near Edinburgh right up until the bank holiday Monday, which is the last day of the Fringe, do go along and enjoy yourself. All of those shows have some worth and some of them are just simply brilliant. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Musical Talk. We'll finish with a song from Take It Interns to give you a feel of what you can see. And then from next week, for a few weeks thereafter, you'll be hearing my in-depth reviews and conversations with the people behind the best musical shows at this year's fabulous Edinburgh Fringe. Do join me then, but until then, let's hear this song from Take It Interns, and we'll speak again soon. Goodbye.
I've always known what's considered to be tasteful. I've always understood the concept of tawdry. I've always grasped what others deem graceful. I've always masked my feelings for the gaudy. I wouldn't raise an eyebrow at something that was highbrow, more focused on the know-how to appreciate the lowbrow. And somehow I've fallen for guilty pleasures, guilty pleasures. Always lower are the leisures of my life. The pressure of my gentry is my bind on my mind and soul. My tastes are elementary. Look inside and you'll find a fool. I'm come to my core, and there's nothing I can do at all. I've never risen for the Great British Bake Off, never written a poem, but I've written off a Peugeot. I'm allergic to Pims, does that make me a fake toff? I tried playing polo, but I think it's absurd, so I've tried execrating low art and elevating high art. But there's trouble that's been brewing at the bottom of my heart that somehow I've fallen for. Guilty pleasures, guilty pleasures. I'll show her the true measure of my mind. There's pressure to be faithful to my genes, to my DNA. A family to obey, forcing these shameful archaic ways. So why have I fallen? Father always tipped his glasses to the middle classes. Never meet a chap from Liverpool at a boarding school. So why have I fallen for guilty pleasures, guilty pleasures? Always lower are the leisures of my life. The pressure of my gentry is my bind, and that's all I have. My tastes are elementary. Look inside and you'll find a chav. I'm common through and through, so why don't she like me too? My guilty pleasure.
This episode of Musical Talk presented and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2013, except for the song where the copyright persists with the creators.